Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Black Millennial Wife. I'm Jet.
And I'm Avis, and we are going to highlight our Black business. So the Black business that I would like to highlight is Swelly Clothing. So this is a shirt that I have from them. It's very comfortable. It's got their nice little logo in there. You can find their clothing line at swellyclothing.com, and you can also go to their Instagram, and that is Swelly65. So Swelly. But they just have some really cute clothes. They have hoodies, they have shirts of all different kinds. Very good quality clothing. You won't throw it in the washing and it shrink a couple sizes. Nothing like that. So go support Black owned business Swelly Clothing.
So, the Black owned business that I'm going to support today is Life is Good Clothing. They have super cute clothing that's for loungewear or workout wear. You can find them on Instagram at Life is Good 214. They have bright colors, just super cute stuff. And I think that you guys would really like it. So if you're in the market for some workout clothes, some loungewear, please go check out Life is Good Clothing 214 on Instagram. Okay, and we have a very, very special highlight. As you can see, we are skinning and grinning and twinning in our Black Millennial Wives t-shirts. We would love to shout out the Black-owned business, Red J Printing. They created this beautiful, beautiful t-shirt for us. Shout out to my sister Avis for creating our logo. She is awesome. And she also created the logo that's on our cups, which is the same that's on our shirts, also done by Red J Printing. You can find Red J Printing on Facebook. They are absolutely phenomenal. Everything is great quality. I've washed my shirt. Everything is still good where it's supposed to be, no shrinkage. I absolutely love it. I have used them before and have been satisfied with everything that I have purchased from Red J Printing. So again, you can find them on Facebook at Red J Printing, and they can do absolutely anything: cups, mugs, t-shirts. Soon our merch will be for sale. If you are interested, be on the lookout for that coming soon. So shout out to them. Thank you for the product. We absolutely love it. And thank you, Avis, for creating the logo. Awesome. Okay, so, money. Money can be a touchy subject when you first get married. I remember having a conversation with more than one friend about how they would never merge bank accounts when they got married. And for me, that was like, what? Wait, what? You're not gonna what? Why? What's the purpose of two becoming one and having two bank accounts, you know? And even if it's not necessarily like you got to cancel yours here and you got to cancel yours here and we come together here, but like, shouldn't everybody's name be on everything and everybody have a card to everything? Like, I feel like that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, I wish Philip would have an account that my name ain't on. I wish it would. Nah, and that's just, I think different strokes for different folks, right? But what we are, the aspect that we are talking from is a biblical aspect of two becoming one in as many ways as we can physically make that happen, right? And so combining your money is such an important piece. I would say to someone who feels hesitant about that in their marriage or in their engagement to dig a little deeper and figure out why. Because if you don't feel like you are at a place where you should be in money management as an adult, then you may need to work on some things. And if you don't feel like your spouse is where they should be in money management, you may want to have a conversation to assist them in working on some things. So when we were in pre-marriage counseling, that was a topic that came up. And I don't think that was ever something that we thought about before the counselor asked us, right? And so she was just saying, what is that going to look like for you all? And it made a lot of sense for us to combine our incomes completely. Everything goes into, both of our checks at the time went into the same account, and we distributed things accordingly, savings, bills, spending money, all of that. What a counselor did kind of help us figure out was what is the maximum amount that you can spend without consulting your spouse first. Now, all due respect to my husband, he's amazing at money management, but he is a little bit more frugal in some ways than I am. So my answer to that question was $500. Okay, why not? I mean,
What?
Okay, listen, I ain't never shared money with nobody before. So I was like,
that's a lot of money, Avis.
That is true. It was a lot of money. So he talked me down. The counselor thought it was outrageous too. And so we agreed on $100. I think that's low, but I understand why it's important. So we have had some situations where I have spent that money and did not consult him. And he has done the same thing too and did not consult me. So now we're at a better place. And if it's, I wasn't including tax. So if it was like 105.87, I was like, oh, that's okay. And that used to bug my husband a lot. So I had to come on.
I can't with you. And not. She said I was not including tax. Okay. We definitely had that conversation too of what would be I'm not even gonna let me not lie. So the conversation happened in the midst of an argument in regard to him going out and buying a PlayStation when we first got married without consulting me, because I felt like that was too much. And so that situation led us to have the conversation of how much are we going to be okay with spending before we have to consult each other. And I will also not lie and say I have spent our limit as well without consulting him on a number of occasions. But I try to, definitely if it's a big purchase, like I may have bought clothes and they just added up to a lot of money. But if it's something that needs to be consulted for sure for both of us, then I try not to ever cross that boundary. And my husband, luckily, because opposites, they work so well together, is my husband is not a shopper. He's not a shopper. He's not a spender. He is frugal, just like Philip. And I'm grateful for that, because when I say your girl can spend some money, your girl can spend some money. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And if Trey needs clothes, more draws, anything, he ain't getting it unless I'm getting it for him. And it's not like a decision that was made. He's just not the person to go out and say, oh, my undershirts have holes in them, let me buy more. He's just ready to wear them until it literally falls into shreds on the floor. That's a whole nother conversation. But we did have that conversation early in our marriage about how much we wanted to say that, okay, this is what we'll be able to spend without consulting each other. And then from that point on, we need to make sure that we have a conversation so that we're both on the same page. And I think that's just a matter of respect for both parties. Regardless, I don't even think it pertains to who's working, who's not working, who's bringing in the money, who's not bringing in the money. It just has to do with the fact that you guys are a unit, and you need to be united in all areas, in finances, in everything. And that just helps you to be united, to know, okay, I'm going to do this, but I've consulted with my husband. He's on board with it. So bam, boom, there's no problems. The goal is to just not have problems. That's all we're trying not to do, because money is one of the top reasons for divorce.
I know. I was very used to paying my own bills. managing my money on my own. And my husband was the same way. So when we came together, it was a little bit of a bumping heads because I wanted to continue to do that, and he wanted to continue to do that. And so something that helped us, again, in pre-marriage counseling, we were having the conversation trying to figure out how that would look. And our marriage counselor was just like, who does it better? That's the person that needs to do it, right? You are both very capable individuals, but who does it better? And when we looked at it, better is relative, right? But
No, don't lie. Philip does it better. Stop boosting it. Period. Don't even do my bro like that. Philip does it better.
fine, I can take it. He does it better. He does money management better. And so I had to relinquish basically all of those things to him. Now, do I know what's happening in our bank accounts and with our bills? Yes. Have I always known? No. There was a time like after that, I got real comfortable. I was just like, oh, I ain't got to worry about paying no bills no more. Like he got it set, hands off. And I was like, I didn't know, like, I had forgotten the password to our bank account, like to log in. And I was just like, okay, that's not like a line sister of ours, like pointed out to me, like, Avis, you still need to know what's going on. So I was like, okay. So I know what's happening, but I think you really have to understand that the person that does it better should be the person that takes care of it, and not necessarily sticking to gender roles and what we think like the man is supposed to. If the wife does it better and you're comfortable with doing it, go ahead and do it. Take that load off of your husband, because that's not a bad thing, right? So I think understanding each other's strengths is a big thing when it comes to finances, and understanding each other's weaknesses is a big thing with finances too.
Absolutely, because I do it in our household.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Trey and I were dating, and I went over to his apartment, and I went in his closet, and I saw all his like papers and files or lack thereof sitting on the top shelf of his closet. Now, that may have worked for him. He moved out at 18 and never went back home, never asked his parents for a dime. So obviously it worked for him. I would go crazy. And sir, I'm more organized. I'm not remembering just off the top of my head. Like I have a system. I know how everything is working. So for our household, because organization, budgeting, all of that, I'm better at. And I'm the one spending the money anyway. You're not the one going out and spending it. Let me just take care of it.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. I'm cool with that. And so, yeah, it has nothing to do with gender roles. And as we have stated before, we both stay at home. I'm pursuing my passions and my dreams right now. You're doing your thing, raising your son and pursuing your dreams and businesses and things like that. And our husbands are going out to a 9 to 5 and are the breadwinners. But I know everything that's going on. I know every dime that's spent. I know everything. So that works for our household. And if vice versa works for your household, then so be it. Do what works best. But everybody needs to be aware of what's happening and what role you play. So whatever role you decide to play, then everybody needs to be on the same page if that's the role that you play.
Yeah. I think roles, finances mean so many different things to so many people, right? Philip is very, very good at taking care of our immediate finances, making sure the bills are paid, making sure the mortgages are paid, all that good stuff. I am more so in charge of and have willingly taken on our long-term finances. So your 401k, all of our stocks and bonds, like all of that stuff, our retirement, what that's going to look like that kind of stuff is where my mind goes. So I am the one that's in charge of investments that we do, like being up on what's happening. So if we need to buy that stock, we can go ahead and make a move. And so that's been my strong point, I guess, like how I've thrived in our finances in my role. And my husband accepts that, and he helps me, supports me in making sure I have what I need, access to everything. And, I don't think that he's worried about our retirement because I'm trying to make the right moves for us now. So it doesn't have to be a one size fits all type of scenario.
Right.
And you got to think about 50 years from now. You have to.
Absolutely. So like for us, so I guess a good question I think that pops into my head is because some people might not know how to save and like steps to take to saving. I know for us, for me specifically, and I think like what you said, Trey is the opposite for us too. So he's paying attention to the 401k and all that stuff. And for us, it worked out to just make sure, especially in regards to like our monthly savings and stuff like that, like the money instantly comes out of the check. Like there's no question, there's no moving, there's no none of that. Because that's when you get caught up. Like you see it in your checking account and you feel like, oh, it's a little extra that I can spend. Absolutely not. I don't need to see it. I don't need to touch it. It just boom goes into our savings account. And then from there, we also have different ways. So we have, of course, Trey's 401k. We have my 403b from when I was a teacher. We have stocks purchased through his company. And then in addition to that, we have other like methods of savings through, I don't even remember what it's called, but through our person that we have our life insurance with. Mm-hmm. So we have different ways. So we have our emergency fund that's there if we need something instantly. Then we have savings that we don't touch. And we also have savings for travel because that's one thing that we're passionate about is traveling and seeing the world. So we make sure that we set aside that money so that we can be able to do the things that we enjoy doing. And I think that's so important when it comes to saving money and making sure that you know what's important to you. If you know you want to retire, you know you don't want to work for the rest of your life, then you need to make sure now that you're setting up steps for you and your husband to be able to do that. Because you have to realize then at that point you're on a fixed income. And so you have to make sure that you're doing it right starting now so that when that time comes that you're able to do it. And it's so encouraging to be a part of conversations where I hear so many young Black women, married couples doing that. I think of somebody specifically who's like, oh yeah, I'm retiring before 65. Like I'm already in the process and making the steps to make sure that I'm retired and done working before 65. And I know she will be done. Like this is it. I'm living my best life from this point on because she's worked hard to pay off all of her debts and preparing for her future children and all of that and making sure that her household is set up for that because it's not just going to happen. Yeah. Sometimes we like to think like, oh, it'll work out. We'll be able to retire one day, but you're not prepping for it. It's not going to happen if you don't prepare for it.
That is very, very true. I think, finances in a marriage can be so convoluted. Like it's so many different avenues. You really have to, you talk about figuring out what's important. You may not be on the same page about what's important, but you figure that out and y'all gonna have to make a decision. Just how you moved as an individual has to change. Like you can't move that same way anymore. And something that I'm thinking about in my marriage is how we pay for big ticket items, right? Like on our house, our first house, our air conditioning unit went out. We live in Texas. That's not an option. Not having it is not an option. So we had to make a move fast. I am the type to charge it, but pay it off, right? I'm not just charging it and forgetting about it. I'm charging it, but I'm going to pay it off. In my mind, And in the reality of it, that boosts your credit. You know what I'm saying? You are able to make whatever purchase you want to make without being cash poor, right? My husband has a completely different outlook on that. He would rather pay cash to be done with it. He don't want to see no charge bill later. He don't want to hear about it after it's done. He wants it to be done, right? But when you have big ticket items like an AC unit that's $7,000 or $8,000, and you have to figure out, what fund am I gonna go into? Am I gonna go into emergency savings? Am I gonna go into? You have to think about all those things, and so we did it the way that he wanted to do it. I was not as comfortable with that because I was like, that's a big old chunk out of our emergency savings that it makes me nervous. I was just like, what if there's an emergency? Like, we not
Right.
gonna have this $8,000 anymore that we could have charged. So like, I remember being kind of frustrated with him about that, but I stepped aside and I let my husband lead, which is what we are called to do, to submit, let him make that decision, and you cross your fingers and toes and hope for the best, right? And the Lord worked it out to where it was fine. And we were okay. And we were not in a situation where we did not have the money if we needed it, which is such a blessing. But just something so simple as how you handle big ticket items can cause such grief in your relationship, you know?
Absolutely. And I think to go along with what you said, tying in submission to this, because if we use the example of me being the one who handles the finances, I think it's so important to make sure that we point out that even though I handle the finances, so let's just say, let's say I was in the same position as Philip and I wanted to just use the cash to get it done, not think about it. But my husband had the reverse and said he wanted to charge it. Being a God-fearing Christian wife, my husband has the final say. That's what that is. That's what that looks like. Who cares if I'm in control of figuring out the finances and stuff like that? Ultimately, my husband has the final say. And you have to remember that as a Christian wife, that regardless of what you may be in control of or taking control of in the household, as far as the role that you play, ultimately your husband is still the head of your household. You are being the helpmeet in managing the finances, but your husband is still the head of that household. So if he feels like that's the best decision and it's not hurting your family, it's not going against the will of God, that's the decision. And it's so important to remember that, because I could get beside myself in a situation and be like, well, I'm the one that controls the finances, so we're going to go ahead and spend the cash so that we don't have to worry about a credit card bill later. But then I'm not walking in Christ and I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing because my husband has decided what would be best for our family, and I am trying to go against that because I think that I hold some higher position than I actually do according to the word of God.
That all makes complete sense, and it's all so hard. I would caution, though, if there is someone listening to this and you know your husband, you know your fiance, you know your boyfriend don't know how to save money, don't know how to save money, don't know how to spend money, they late on bills, they don't know money management, you got to make a decision, sis.
That's definitely a different situation for sure. That's exactly why I said it's not hurting the family, because ultimately God wouldn't want you to go with something that's going to hurt your family. So as long as your husband is in alignment and what he's doing is not going to hurt or hinder the family, then you go with your husband. But in the event that it is not the case, and him saying, oh, we got $10,000, let's spend 8 of it on this AC instead of charging it if we could, then that's obviously probably not the best choice.
But you have to find a way, which is so difficult. You have to find a way to be submissive and still help, even if your husband cannot see clearly. And how we do that is following Jesus. That's the only option that we have in those scenarios. We cannot change our husband's thought process. We cannot fix him. We can't do that. But you have to remain the Christian that you need to be and trust that the Lord is going to work it out for your good, for your family's good, for your husband's good. And if you're in that situation, go to counseling. Go to trusted people in God that can get through to your husband and tell him what needs to happen, that can support and help you understand what needs to happen, because sometimes you may be in the wrong too about how the money needs to be spent. Money is such a sensitive topic, and I feel like my parents divorced over money because they were not on the same page about how things should be earned and how things should be spent. And I made it very clear to Philip moving into our marriage that I did not want to argue about money. And that is just who I am naturally. Like, outside of our relationship, I don't trip about money. I will not trip about money. I won't, because it's too destructive. And it's such a fleeting thing. You can have $10,000 today, have a medical emergency, and it's gone. So I'm not. Now, I will say, when we got married, the IRS did audit they did audit me. And that was a time I was like, whoo, wait a minute. I ain't never had the IRS audit. Like, what is this? But I learned that when you file a different status from previous statuses, that triggers them to look at you, right? So it's not that you did anything wrong. But I would say that's the only time in my life, thank the Lord, that I've ever had to be like a little bit concerned about what's going on. But I will not let that ruin my marriage. I will not. And so if it's a hill that I will not die on. Let me say it like that. If we are in a situation where we just do not agree about how money is going to go, I'm going to let it go. And it's not hard for me to let it go, because I saw how destructive money can be in a marriage and how it can tear it apart. And so that could be why my parents were better off not married, but still together, because the money was being separate. Right? Like they weren't making those financial decisions together. And so it kind of moved out of the way and they could focus on each other. And so, it's just not something that I'm going to argue about.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would probably say that having financial conversations prior to getting married is probably like an 11. And I think it may be uncomfortable in that phase, but I really think it's one of those bullets that you got to just bite and you got to have them. Because like we said, it's such a sensitive topic and can be such a big demise to the family unit, to know like how your spouse manages money, perceives the future for you guys, retiring, like we talked about, merging bank accounts, being on each other's account, saving money versus spending money, all of those things. You got to know those things, at some of them to some extent, prior to getting married. And I think my gauge for me, we didn't necessarily have it like a sit down conversation. But regardless of all his mail being at the top of his closet, I knew that through our conversation and through learning like the phases that he had been through post college when we weren't really like, interacting with each other. I mean, just things like him moving out of his house and never going back home, never asking his parents for money, having a car fully paid off, working towards paying student loans, having one credit card. Those were just conversations that just naturally occurred in that phase of getting to know you. And you have to be mindful of that. That's telling you things about your spouse's or future spouse's financial status, And so I think just like, even if it's not just a sit down business meeting between the two of you, which is still fine and healthy if you can do that, having those conversations naturally, you have to remember and pay attention to, because if you realize that your husband has $75,000 in debt and he's 22 years old and it's not from student loans, I would be a little cautious. You know what I mean?
I think you do have to have those conversations, but talking about student debt, like student loan debt, I didn't tell Philip how much student loan debt I had until we was engaged, and that's real. Like, I think
surprise.
And you can make your decision based on that information now, but like I didn't feel like honestly, I didn't feel like he needed to know that while we were dating. Like, and we went to the same school, so he had an idea of like how much school costs for me and that kind of stuff. But I didn't, he has he was blessed to have parents that were like really forward thinking when it came to preparing to support a child through college. My parents were not necessarily on that wave. And so I paid for it myself and I got student loans. And so, it was probably more than he thought it was, but I didn't feel like he deserved that information as my boyfriend. That wasn't his.
So not necessarily, but you knew where your relationship was going and or hoping to go. So would you do it the same? Would you go back and do it the same? Like you wouldn't have that conversation prior to being engaged?
Yeah, that was none of his business. We're not together. We hadn't paid a bill together. And I was not for sure, and I don't think he was for sure that we were ever going to get to the engagement stage. It was sometimes where it didn't look like it was going to work. And so I do think keeping some of your business makes a lot of sense. Now, is that biblical? I don't know. It could not be. But I don't feel like somebody that you don't have that level of commitment to necessarily deserves that information. If you are willingly giving it, then wonderful. You may not ever have to have a real sit down business meeting conversation about it. But for me, I was like, you're not getting that level of personal information until we have a true commitment. So
I could agree with that. I could definitely agree with that. A level of commitment, which doesn't necessarily have to be actual engagement. You know what I mean? Like there can be a level of commitment in your relationship to where you know where you're going.
I've never experienced that, so I can't speak on that. But the level of commitment that I needed was an engagement ring.
Yeah.
Not a conversation, an actual hard engagement ring.
Not a promise ring.
Then I'm an open book. You can ask me whatever you want. I'm gonna tell you what you want. My social security number, you can have it, right? Like, but not until it's a for real thing.
I feel that. I would say probably one of my takeaways for this episode would be if two are becoming one in every aspect. And that means financially. There's no go accounts. There's no my bank account, your bank account. I understand there are people who are in another stage in their life and have lived a single life for several years, 30 plus years, and so on and so forth, and maybe entering into relationships. But Your age has nothing to do with what's in the Bible. We're going strictly from what scripture says. And if two are becoming one in every aspect.
I like that. I think my takeaway for this conversation would be make up in your mind that you are not going to let money destroy your relationship and your marriage. Just make it up in your mind. Hard times are going to come, you know, droughts money wise are going to come. People lose their job. We both talked about how I've lost my job, been laid off, and Trey, and Trey, Jet's husband, has been laid off early in their marriage. Like, those things come, but do not let that destroy what God put together, because it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
So true. That's a word. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up by how we won at adulting this week. We all want to be adults. We all want to grow up. We can't wait to drive. We can't wait to do this, that, and the third. And then it comes and it's just one thing after another, after another, after another. So we want to celebrate it when we do things that are helping us to be the best adults that we could possibly be. So I would like to celebrate how I won at adulting this week by setting up my laptop by myself. So my husband got me a wonderful new laptop for our anniversary, and he's an IT guy, so that's typically his field. We talked about working in your strengths, but I wanted to do it myself, so I got on this thing straight out of the box, set it up myself, linked it to my phone, did everything I possibly could. So I am super proud of myself for doing it and not having to ask him for any help. Okay.
Good job, sis. Okay. So mine, I talked about in a previous episode that my internet was out for a couple of days. And so that means no TV, because we have a Roku stick, right? And so you don't got the internet, you don't got TV. But I took it upon myself during those 2 days, and my husband was out of town on business, to really deep clean my house. And like, I was cleaning from like sun up to sundown while taking care of my infant child. And so I was like really going at it. Like, I sat on the kitchen floor and wiped down, scrubbed down all my cabinets. Like, I did the baseboards on the wall. Like, I did some deep cleaning. And that probably has happened since before my kids. So I feel like I was very productive during those 2 days without TV. I was so productive that my smart mouth husband came home and was like, "Oh, we need to knock the internet out once a week so you can do some cleaning." Yeah. I let it go though. I let that little smart aleck comment go. So that's another way how I was an adult and did not argue.
Amen to that. Listen, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Black Millennial Wife.
So let us know how finances work in your house. Does it work in your house? Are you having some issues? Do you need some advice from the community that we're building? Let us know. Maybe even let us know what your limit is that you won't spend without talking to your spouse first. So please like, share, and comment this video. Don't forget to subscribe and be on the lookout next week on Friday for a new episode. Thanks. Bye.